Watch and burn.
Hey everybody. So tonight I am looking to discuss, I believe the film came out in 2023, and that film in question is Ferryman. Now, the story here is a little more interesting than usual for me as far as my involvement is concerned, because the co-writer of this slash director of this, Darren Bender, he contacted me in regards to my rather enthusiastic review of Exhibit A. Now, he was the co-writer of that. I believe he co-wrote it with the director of that movie, Dom Rotherow, I believe was the other dude's name. And he said that he liked how enthusiastic I was in that review, and he wanted to know if I wanted to discuss his newest film, and that's this movie here, which again I believe is 2023's Ferryman. And so I said, sure, it sounded really fun, and he gave me the link so I could watch it on Vimeo, and I did, and wow. First off, this is a complete departure from Exhibit A. This is not found footage. This tells the story of two characters, Ash, who is a soldier who's suffering from a considerable amount of PTSD, if I'm not mistaken, as the result of having to gun down a kid while in combat, and the kid in question ended up paralyzing his buddy Sparks, who we're introduced to at the start of the film. And the movie is also about a character by the name of Eve. She's left with some seriously degenerative disease that if I'm not mistaken, it's not made explicitly clear what is wrong with her. But once the diagnosis has been made, which in Eve's case it already has, the person in question has 6 months to 2 years before they just erode into nothing. So the movie starts off with Sparks, Ash's buddy, the dude that's paralyzed. He's in a wheelchair. He shows up at this older chick's house. And just as a quick side note, I love how how Sparks was wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt. I thought that was incredibly fun. He shows up at this old chick's house, except he can't get up to her front door because he's in the wheelchair. And that, as a quick side note, was something else that I really liked about this movie, was it showed, even though Sparks isn't in the movie for very long, it showed the ridiculous amount of difficulty that a person in a wheelchair does have to go through really well. Like I said, despite the fact that Sparks isn't in the movie very much, he can't get up to the chick's house. He had to crawl up to her front door because at the front of her yard, there's a bit of there's a sort of like curb, so to speak, and he, of course, can't get his wheelchair up there. So he has to crawl up to the chick's house. And then he goes inside with her once she helps. He's in his wheelchair again. And you see her, there's like this chain with this massive hook, like she's setting up some sort of industrial plant in her living room. And she's like, "Are you ready?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." He's like, "Are you ready?" And she says, "Yep." And then you see the chain that she's rigged on the second floor of her house. You know, she's tossed it around her neck, and we're led to believe that she's committed suicide, which of course she totally has. And then it cuts to Ash, who I think he goes AWOL in this. I'm not 100% about that. I always wondered there if whether or not Ash went AWOL. So he ends up going back to, I don't believe it's his parents' house, because at one point the older woman says that, you were a scared kid when you came to us. So I don't think these are his parents. And he tries to see if he can hang out there at their house for a while, if he can live there for a bit, because he is going through a lot as the result of having to gun down a kid I imagine he's somewhere in the Middle East. And his hand is suffering, like the physical side of the PTSD causes his hand to sort of twitch, which reminded me of Tom Hanks's character in Saving Private Ryan. He was going through the same thing. And they said that he can't stay at their house because he's a big, strong man, yada, yada, yada. And so then he goes back over to Sparks' house, but Sparks is gone. Sparks has a plastic bag over his head, and he's looks like he's committed suicide. And this chick is attempting to leave his apartment, or his house, sorry. And Ash chases her down, and that is how we're introduced to Eve. And he finds out through her that she's part of this group where, it's like you're a ferryman, so to speak. And for anybody that doesn't know, the ferryman is the person that carries you over to the other side. Like, as after you've died, they carry you into heaven. And way back when, we used to put pennies on dead people's eyes, at least in the West, they used to do that. I'm not sure about the rest of the world. But you'd put a penny on each eye because that was the ferryman's toll, was 2 cents in order to ferry you over to the other side. So this group that she's hooked up with, if you monitor a suicide, somebody comes to monitor your suicide. And so Ash and Eve very quickly fall in love. And like I said a minute ago, it's discovered that she is terminally ill. And that's why she was helping Sparks ferry his way over to the other side because then somebody was going to come along and help her. But Ash decides to intervene there. He offers to break the dude's neck, which he does, the guy that was supposed to ferryman Eve over to the other side so that Ash can look after Eve. And he throws the guy off a bridge, which, wow, I'm like, Jesus, Ash, that's I get why you did it, but wow, you can just kill people like that, eh? I'm like, that's nuts. But anyways, so as a quick side note too, I'm watching this movie and it's like, I know the dude playing Ash. I can't place where I know him from, and I'm resisting the urge to grab my phone because, that would be the easiest thing to do. And I'm like, no, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And of course, like I said, 2/3 of the way through the movie, I'm like, oh, fuck this. I can't figure out where I know this guy from. I grab my phone, and he played Joe King, the brother in Exhibit A. And it all just kind of locked into place. I'm like, that's why I know his face. He's a little older, of course. Not a lot older. He's a little older. Or maybe he is a lot older. It's hard to say, but he is aging incredibly well. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, he was in Exhibit A. That's where I know him from. And I think my favorite thing about this movie was, despite the incredibly rough subject matter by assisted suicide, basically, it's not depressing. There's nothing about this movie that's sad. In fact, I would argue that this movie blurs the line between hope and heartbreak, because Ash and Eve, like, once they hook up at the start and he finds her hiding in a dumpster because she's trying to get away from him, and then they start fucking around in the dumpster. They're in this above ground parking with, like, the spiral that the cars drive up and down, and they're jumping inside of the dumpster each, and the other one's pushing the dumpster down, and they're dunk 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 down it, and then they're doing it again to each other, and then they decide to do it together. And then I loved how free they felt. I loved how, despite the fact that they're both adults, they behaved like kids. Like, they trespassed a lot, and I liked how they ended up on that giant crane. And there's a crane locally too. I really wanted to do the video up the crane, but unfortunately it's February and it's like -16 every day, so I just didn't feel like climbing the fucking thing in order to do this because I would have froze to death. So I loved that, and I loved how Ash says, I wish we could just kind of freeze this moment and like hang here forever. And then them falling in love was so cute, and it was so convincing, and it was so natural, and it felt so real. And then, of course, we meet Eve's parents, who, the dude who plays her dad, he was in the HBO series Chernobyl. I recognized him from that. I know the mom from somewhere too. I just can't place where I knew the mom. And it occurred to me now that I never looked up where the mom was from. So I have no idea. But I felt really bad for them because they were going to set her up with some form of like palliative care. And then she doesn't want that, of course. And then her and Ash get more and more serious. The parents end up embracing Ash. But it gets to the point where she can't even control her bowels. And then the sound design in this movie, Jesus, that was so amazing. Like, for example, the noise that's made at the start of the film when the old chick that Sparks is sort of monitoring kill herself, it makes this chunk chunk chain sound, and it's the same sound that Sparks's garage makes when him and Ash open it, because it's one scene early on, he gives Ash his motorcycle. Ash, of course, has no idea that he's going to kill himself. He just wants it to go to somebody decent and somebody that he likes, blah, blah, blah. Ash offers to pay for it. He says, no, don't worry about it. And like I said, as they open the garage that has his motorcycle, it's the exact same sound that it made when the old chick hung herself with the chain in her living room. I loved that. And every time Eve is experiencing some form of fallout from whatever the degenerative diseases that she has, it sounds like some kind of manhole cover is being pulled. And I think that sound is accurate. I'm guessing here, of course. I think that's accurate because she is sort of, every time it happens, her body sort of gives out. And like I said, she has trouble controlling her bowels at one point. And so it's almost like she is being kind of sucked into the sewer with every bout of this, whatever it is that happens to her. And it seems to be getting progressively worse, which of course it does, because like I said earlier on, once it's diagnosed, you have 6 months to 2 years before you're gone. And apparently it's an incredibly painful way to go. And like I said, this is not depressing despite the heavy subject matter. I thought the idea of this organization existing was really cool too, but I also liked how there wasn't much focus put on the Ferryman organization. Like it's never made clear at all how Eve hooked up with these people or how she found them or whatever it was. There's none of that. It's just she's a part of it. She helps Sparks. Someone is going to come and help her, and I liked that. But then at the same time though, on the flip side of that coin, I'm really curious. How does that organization? How did they start? How did the whole Ferryman thing begin? Like, was it like a Facebook thing? Like, how do you get something like that up and running? Like, where if you help me kill myself, someone will come along and help you kill yourself. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I really wonder, like, how. But nevertheless, I'm glad they didn't make a big deal about that in this movie. I loved how cute Ash and Eve were. And then the other thing that I loved about this movie was how it seemed like, despite the fact that we knew the world was still populated because there would technically be the odd person here and there, they felt sort of on their own. Like wherever Ash and Eve are, it's populated, but it's not populated. So it was like the focus was taken off society's influence, and it was just put like the magnification, sorry, was put on the relationship between Eve and Ash. And it seems like everyone else has sort of taken like a deep back seat, and for the most part, like they're alone in every scene. And we do see a lot of vehicles again. So like I said, this isn't some sort of like they're on an island and it's not real. Like this is an episode of Black Mirror or something. No, it's the world. There's people everywhere. But I liked how the focus was put on Ash and Eve, like in a more singular sense. Like we didn't have to compete with people being everywhere. People do come into it, of course, naturally. But the other thing I liked too, even though I don't really know if it meant anything, was Ash physically always seems to be chasing Eve. Eve always seems to be running from him, not because she doesn't want to be around him, but she just always seems to be running and he seems to be chasing. Like there's this sort of endless game of cat and mouse that if there is a meaning, I'm not deep enough to get it, but I still really enjoyed it. And yeah, so that is it. So let me hang on, wait a second. Let me go over my notes. Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's everything I wanted to say. So yeah, definitely a big shout out goes out to Darren Bender, who is the director / co-writer of this film, for contacting me and cluing me into this because I had no idea this movie existed. So thank you, dude, for that. But like always, most importantly, never forget that the world is a way better place because you are in it. No matter whatever it is you're going through, just hold on. It will get better. The song will change and you will start to feel like yourself again. You guys are amazing. I'm getting out of here. Have a great night.